Welcome back to Fresh Rubber. Hello, Gav.
Hello, Jace.
Can we say that Lady Luck giveth and taketh away, or is there a different way to look at that start? Kimi Antonelli somehow managed to pull it off and do what I predicted he'd do yesterday, although in very different fashion, that he'd go from pole to victory, and in the process become the first Italian driver to win 2 Grand Prix in a row since Alberto Ascari back in 1950, and also the youngest ever driver to be leading the World Championship. What a weekend. How do you feel about the events that unfolded yesterday, Gav? Do you feel like Russell and Piastri were robbed, or do you feel like Antonelli but he got his due? What's your vibe?
I feel like no one's robbed in F1. Like, across the season, opportunities appear. And like you say, what did Antonelli drop down to? Was it like 6th?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so he started in first, qualified beautifully, dominated George, started first on the grid, but massive wheel spin at the beginning, awful start, which I think somehow the Mercedes team need to look at this because, you can't, kind of qualify first and then drop down to 6th, but apparently you can.
He's getting used to doing that, though. He's done that 3 races in a row.
He's getting so used to doing it. And yet the kid, the boy genius, let's call this episode Boy Genius. The boy genius fights his way back to winning the race. Yes, Lady Luck shone upon Kimi. The safety car, like, how do you feel about safety cars these days, Jace? Like, are they, are they problematic? Do they, is it fair that across a season everyone gets their kind of opportunity to miss one or get one? It does deeply reshape the race, though, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
Good question. I think there's a few dimensions to this. Firstly, safety cars is a must-have. It's a necessary thing, especially at a track like Suzuka, where we have had, if we think back to Jules Bianchi in 2014 when there was a wet weather race.
If we just think back to that, do we, Jace? We just think back.
I just think back to that time before I was even watching F1. So, I'm adopting this. But the thing that happened in 2014 was there was a vehicle moving machine. What do they call the JCB big vehicle lifter thingies? That's a technical term. Lifting a car off track in wet weather conditions, and a driver went off at the same place, crashed into the car and died. So, like, taking safety very seriously is a good part of F1 henceforth. And so that we're very anxious. I think it was 2 years ago, there was a wet weather race at Suzuka where there was another one of those vehicles on track at a spot where Carlos Sainz had gone off and Gasly went by, and it was a big furore about it. So safety car, mandatory, very important, super, super important. And I think we should talk about the thing that led to the safety car period with Ollie Bearman's big shunt at that spoon curve. I also think the it goes around, what goes around comes around thing is a bit of a bitter pill to swallow, because the drivers can say, maybe to self-console, you get lucky some days and you get unlucky the others. So, this weekend it was my turn to be unlucky if you're George Russell, or lucky to be if you're Kimi Antonelli. But it's not like there's a quota. It's not like there's a fairness system at play where you've got to get your due later on. It's just, you could be unlucky the whole career. And it's just how it goes.
Totally. I mean, like, I don't want to get into this too much because this is just like pure speculation, but there is something deeply unfair about F1 fundamentally. There's some deeply unfair elements to it, and this is one of them. There's a world in which at a safety car you could hold position and get a choice to kind of go in and, like, you could have kind of the ability to choose whether you swap, you give up track position and go in and change tires or not. But it really is just where you are on the track at a given time, and often it comes down to seconds for teams to decide what they're going to do. So I do think it's like an unfair thing within F1, and yet it's expected. Everyone knows that that's how it goes, so it's kind of hard to kind of, I don't know, push against it. But there are some bigger issues, I think, as you've hinted at in F1, and particularly with a set of regulations. And with what felt like quite a frightening crash for Ollie Bearman, questions are being raised around the paddock about this new regulation set, closing speed, and for those who don't know what I'm talking about here, kind of the ability to kind of deploy electrical energy into your engine into a corner is what led to Ollie Bearman, potentially having a fatal crash yesterday. And I didn't know this, Jace. Maybe you did, but apparently drivers and teams have been raising this issue since the very first sight of the regulation set, that this ability to come into a corner and deploy electrical energy at a rate of potentially a closing speed of up to 50 kilometers per hour can lead to disaster. Now, Colapinto and Bearman didn't connect. Had they, it could have been very, very different. We could have seen Bearman flipping into the air and doing multiple kind of rolls. But this is an issue, right? And drivers are raising it. There feels like actually for the first time in F1 since the introduction of the halo, which kind of made everything safer, people are kind of putting their hand in the air and saying, drivers are putting their hand in the color signs, today when, kind of said, this is a real problem. And imagine on a track like Singapore or Vegas, imagine where there's no kind of off-road, there's no kind of runway to kind of escape. There's some danger and some jeopardy here. What do you think the FIA are going to do? But I think they have to reflect on this, right?
Yeah, I so agree, and I think it comes down to I think a deep reflection on why this is what it is, because we have had devices or things in the past that have allowed greater closing speed. Think back to DRS, which we had for 11 years running, more or less, maybe longer, and that allowed for the driver to open the rear wing to get a faster overtake speed and to pull off an overtake. And this is different from DRS, as an example, because you can deploy it on any part of the track. It's not like DRS where it's only within specific zones or sections of the track, and they're very finely calibrated because they're straight and they usually come into a heavy braking zone. So it's kind of a very controlled, predictable environment. But when we think about, as we saw this weekend in Suzuka, that moment was on a curved part of the track coming into another sort of an unusually curved part of the circuit, which isn't a heavy braking zone. So the kind of deployment dynamics, the overspeed dynamics, and the visibility and the curvature and the camber and the sort of elevation change of the road, it's very different to what the regulators and what F1 have had to deal with, and the teams and drivers have had to deal with for more than a decade. So it's like a new type of overtake, and it's inherently, seemingly, much more dangerous. And so there's definitely some soul searching, I think, to be done from the regulator side, because the words on the paper have allowed for something that is massively dangerous. And luckily yesterday we didn't see anything more serious than, I guess it looks like a sore ankle or a sore knee or something. Colapinto watching someone whiz by at 350 kilometers an hour, ending up sideways in the barrier. I mean, that could have been really serious accident. And you think, okay, as you say, we've seen cars flipping. We've seen cars go into barriers sideways. We've seen all sorts of things in the past.
Yeah.
It just seems a lot more likely now that they've got this magic mushroom button that can just make them go 50 k's faster at sort of any moment in time. It's bizarre. And they said that Colapinto wasn't doing anything different. It was just this overtake attack mode thing that they've got that allowed for that to happen. So I'm on the same side as Carlos Sainz. I think there's some serious revision that needs to be done. And probably a good thing is that it's electrical, that they can. It's not like it's baked into the car design with the wings and that sort of thing. It's actually something that could be adjusted. So, there's definitely room for some revision here, Gavin. I think we talked about having a what we do to change F1 podcast during our lovely little break between this race and the next. So we should come back to that for sure. What do you think?
Did you, talking of Mario Kart, did you see Jack Black did the pre-show intro?
Yes.
It was, I had to write, I've got I've got a huge amount of time for Jack Black because I just think like he's just like, oh, anyway,
He's fully committed.
he's fully committed to everything he does in life. And
Yeah.
he said in part of his monologue, if you didn't watch it, it's so worth going back and watching. But he's like, it twists and it bites, a high speed ballet like a rock god hitting a high note. He's talking about Suzuka the track, and then my partner turns around and says to me, he's in the new Super Mario Galaxy movie that's coming out. And I just thought the sweet irony of this, we've got kind of like all these drivers basically, and just a few minutes ago talking about Mario Kart and the mushroom button. F1 have invited someone in a Mario Kart movie to come on and intro F1 when everyone's criticizing F1 now with these these electrical boosts and overtake modes as being too much like Mario Kart. You can't make this up. Like, was this someone in the press team being like, if we double down on the Mario Kart thing, will it go away? Well, no, it won't go away because you just had Jack Black, who's in the Mario Kart movie, talking about Mario Kart. So yeah, Max is Max is right. Speaking of Max, I did see he was speaking today, and I'm beginning to think that we might lose Max. And you can push back on this as much as you like, Jace, but like he said today, what's the point in being P7 and P8? Like, this is not what I'm made for. He said it doesn't feel natural driving these cars, and he said I would rather be with my family, enjoying my baby and my family life than doing this. I don't know how much longer we'll have Max in F1 if this continues in this fashion. I don't think he's not interested in being P7, P8. He knows he knows who he is. He knows the pace that he can carry. And yeah, I mean, interestingly, we talked in the quali episode. If you haven't listened, go back and listen. But we talked about the fact that Hadjar, Max got knocked out in Q2, and Hadjar went ahead. He took Hadjar in the first 2 laps. Like, regardless of where he qualifies, he's always going to be dominant. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Jace? Are we going to lose? We're going to lose Max?
He's such a man of the people, isn't he? Complaining about having to turn up to a job that he doesn't like and how he'd rather be at home with his family. It's just so relatable. How many people have that exact same feeling? And yet,
people who are ferociously competitive and know who they are maybe have the confidence to say, yeah, like, I know I'm privileged. I know that I get to do this. I've kind of done it. And I don't like driving these cars, and I don't think this is racing. And we've talked a lot about this in the first 3 episodes of this season, whether that's, whether you should feel privileged to be there. But like it or not, Max is kind of like, I don't really like this set of regulations. If it's another 4 years of this, I'm not sure if I'm in. And I respect that, because that's someone kind of, I don't know, like it's potentially better than Lewis Hamilton slowly kind of receding and becoming less relevant. I think it's cooler. To be Max and be like, I won 4. I don't care if I win 7 or 8. I don't care. I don't need to compete with Schumacher and Hamilton. Like, I don't care. I'm a great driver. I don't like this set of regs. Peace out. I would respect that.
I'm all for it too. I think leave the sport, Max. You've made your mark. You've set the world on fire.
Has he ever?
And go off and dominate Le Mans. Go off and dominate some other racing series. I'm all for it. I would hate to see a petulant, grumpy, ever tiresome Max just sort of lingering on the grid. I'm not interested in that at all.
No,
I don't want to see a repeat of the Sebastian Vettel years.
He's a lion.
He should go off and win the Indy 500. Do what Alonso couldn't do. Go off and win Le Mans. I think that'd be amazing. Actually, I'd love to see that happen. He's been doing other racing activities in the last little while, like physical racing out in the real world. He actually won a race between this race and the Chinese Grand Prix, but his team got disqualified because they used too many tires
too
in
many
qualifying.
tires. Yeah. How do you make the mistake? In kind of related news that I thought was quite interesting, Toto came out also post race and said he was asked point blank, would you sign Max if the opportunity came up? And he said, I've got no interest in signing Max. I'm so happy with George. I'm so happy with Kimi. That's not even on my radar. So those conversations we were having last year where Max was visiting Toto, potentially on a yacht, and conversations were happening, I think that ship has sailed for Max. And I do actually believe Toto when he says that. I think for now, Toto is very happy. And why wouldn't Toto be happy? Look, they're dominating. But to bring it back to the beginning of our podcast and Kimi and George and, George finished P4. Like, this is brutal for George. Like, Kimi's now leading by what, 7 points, Jace? Is it 9? 9 or 7?
9 points.
9 points. So Kimi's now leading by 9 points over George. And George, as we've talked about, had already kind of crowned himself as the winner from day one. He was believing what the bookies were saying. I tell you what, the bookies must be sweating right now, some of those bookies. But someone
and
pointed
we've got
something
two fewer rounds as well this year. So
we've got
there's the odds get a little bit tighter.
But think about what's in George's head right now. So you got George, right? Had to do Williams, had to like slog it out in a low tier team. Arrives at Mercedes in the shadow of probably the GOAT, the greatest of all time, in the shadow of Lewis as a number 2 driver. Then, as he arrives at Mercedes, gets a terrible car for a couple of years. And just when that car starts getting good, Toto brings in Kimi. And Toto loves Kimi. And Toto stakes his reputation on Kimi. Like, literally, think about what Toto did. Toto put himself on the line bringing Kimi in, like someone who'd never driven in a lower tier team, never proved himself in F1. So like Toto loves Kimi, even Hamilton loves Kimi, no slumming in a lesser team, and he's already matching him. In fact, he's already beating him. Like,
and
he's
the youngest ever F1 championship leader.
You're George. You've slogged it through. You finally got your seat at Mercedes. You're the number 1 driver, but now you're kind of like not the number 1 driver. Like, what's going through George's head right now?
But to be fair, his qualifying was hampered by some twerking at Mercedes.
In the last 2, yeah.
I don't know if it was twerks or tweaks in the China Grand Prix, but they made some error or some issue stopped him in China, so he was hampered. And then in Suzuka, he had some setup changes that did not work, so he was kind of fighting with his one arm behind his back. And then it really was just unlucky because he pitted literally the lap before the Bearman crash, and you don't, as a strategist, I'm sure you're not sitting there thinking, well, the odds of someone crashing are going up lap by lap.
No,
it's just the biggest sort of unlucky choice. And it was an appropriate choice at the time. He wasn't able to get past Piastri. He needed to try something different. And so George pulled the trigger, came in for a change, comes out, fresh rubber all the way. But then, bang, Bearman hits the wall, and Kimi Antonelli is just perfectly placed to slot into that pit lane, get himself some fresh rubber, and out he goes. So, and Kimi wasn't making that much progress. He was stuck behind Leclerc. It wasn't like he was able to make an impact. So Kimi is the huge beneficiary through no, doing of his own. And George is just sitting there feeling robbed. And we've got 3 weeks for him to sit and stew in those juices.
Well, this is the problem.
And that feeling of unfairness.
This is the problem.
Until we regroup in Miami.
Yeah, like momentum is such a thing in sports, and right now Kimi feels everything is possible, and 3 races in, I think George is feeling like crap. Like I can mathematically in my mind understand why I'm not leading, and yet what if the year unfolds? I think he kind of swore a bunch and said like, can't believe my luck. Like when you start talking about luck, then you're already losing because you're beginning to put the fate of your championship in the hands of Lady Luck rather than your own skill. So, look,
Plus,
don't get me.
Mercedes
Don't.
has a bit of history of getting behind their number one driver. They made great
Well,
pains to try and keep equality between Hamilton and Rosberg, but then when Hamilton established dominance over Bottas, it was very clearly Hamilton for the win and Bottas there as the wingman. And so you might think if you're Russell, uh-oh, is that my fate? Is that where I'm going? 3 or 4 more rounds to come. If that point gap keeps growing, it's kind of game over. And
absolutely,
we had this
absolutely.
dynamic with McLaren last year, where in the sort of internal team dynamic at McLaren, they right up until the end, and probably to a fault, they kept that even pairing. I don't think Mercedes is built the same way. They're going to throw all in behind the one that's most likely to win. And
Yeah,
so far,
but at
on
which
free race
point?
evidence, yeah,
But
which
at
point?
which point? I think this is the thing I was just thinking today. At what point, like, obviously McLaren, Zach did something completely unworldly in F1 and really genuinely let the racers fight it out last year. Um, at what point in the season does Toto decide who gets preferential treatment? Is it halfway through? Is it, kind of 3/4 of the way through? I who knows? But like that will be a fascinating thing to watch this year. At what point do the team pull the trigger and decide who their number one driver is? Because I feel like we started with George as clearly the number one driver. Um, and Kimi was just there to support. He had a great year the year before, like really coming up, but it wasn't quite his time. Whereas now that is gone. Like it is game on. And I think, gosh, like I wouldn't want to be Toto dealing with this. And we haven't even seen any friction.
No.
We haven't seen any kind of argy bargy like we did with Piastri and Lando towards the second half, third of kind of where it gets a bit intense. We haven't seen any of that. We've got all that to look forward to.
And yet, I'm not sure we'll see the needle between them. I think you
Really?
might see a bit of it from George, but my take from someone who's never met the young man, he just seems like a really kind of sweet little young guy. Like I don't see him being having a killer instinct off track, and I don't see that coming. Maybe give it a few years when he's got a few scars under his belt, as it were.
I just don't think you get. I don't think you get anywhere near F1 without having a brutal killer instinct, even if you're nice on camera. But let's
I
come
think
back.
actually, can I just add one more
Yeah,
thread to that jumper? I think what Kibby does have that most drivers don't. I haven't seen a lot of this in pretty much, all of the driver interviews and things that I've participated or observed in the last couple of years. Is Kimi seems self-critical and confident at the same time. He's got this
yeah,
sort of absolute elite level of expectation of himself, and he's able to criticize himself even when he wins, but in a way that doesn't seem like he's getting down on himself, if that
yeah,
makes sense. Like you
yeah.
saw that with Norris, you see that with Hamilton sometimes. Sometimes Max gets into a real funk. Kimmy's just there going, that was clearly a weakness. Like he said about his start after in the interview after he won, he just flat out said, "My starts are a weakness. I need to spend a few weeks working out the clutch drop." And it didn't sort of come as like a thing that would wobble him psychologically. It's just a fact. He's got it. He's got to fix it, and he's going to do better. And I marvel at that psychological resilience that he's got at such a young age and at that elite level of sport. I just think that's amazing.
It's nuts. Hamilton also was speaking about how he feels about Ferrari and McLaren, and I think we touched on this in our last episode, where I think I said something along the lines of like, I think Mercedes have got this year, but the most interesting battle might be the Ferrari McLaren battle, and I think Piastri would have won that race yesterday had it not been for that Bearman
Agreed.
accident. And I think we might be beginning to see some of the development within that team coming to challenge Ferrari. And that feels exciting to me. It felt, I was obviously a huge Lando fan. I still am, but I was very much gunning for Lando last season. I've decided to be agnostic this season and just not care. So I'm just really enjoying anyone who wins. I just don't care. Like, just let the best man win. But I have to say, a rush of joy to see Piastri P2 in this race and to see McLaren, after two awful, kind of starts at the beginning of the year, begin to show some pace and some form. And to see Piastri just like, he's bounced back from, like, to come P2 in the third race after, like, letting go of a championship last year. I'm like, come on, Piastri, let's see what you've got. Like, I would love to see this year shake out, that McLaren bring upgrades and begin to challenge George and Kimi.
As he said, when we start races, we're not too bad, eh? We actually
Yeah,
do a pretty good job. If
yeah.
they can get to the grid, then they're gonna be okay. Yeah, it's exciting. I also think it's pretty awesome seeing the Ferraris go wheel to wheel. That
Oh,
kind of that kind of thrilling millimeter precision racing at speed is awesome. I'm so here for it, and I'm loving seeing. Sort of, I'll come back to McLaren in a moment. But with Ferrari, I'm loving seeing how different circuits seem to favor one of the two drivers. But it's not like just a trend like we saw last year, where Leclerc was just clearly better than Hamilton at every circuit, and Hamilton had good days, but he was mostly struggling. Whereas this time round, they're kind of going toe to toe, and some circuits and some days will favor one driver versus the other, but Ferrari aren't getting in the way and saying, no, you got to let him through, he's faster than you. None of that business that you get on team radio sometimes. It's just like the McLaren ethos from last year. Let them race, let them sort it out on track, and they're respectful of each other. They understand their skills and their capabilities, and they're gonna not give each other too much of a gap and race hard. So I think that's really exciting. And as you say, Ferrari McLaren, that second spot in the constructors standings is definitely not a lock for either of them, and it will be a race to see who can develop faster. It'll be a race to see who can sort out any of the sort of what's the word for it? Like the reliability aspect. If Ferrari can sort out getting their turbos slightly bigger, but in a way that doesn't damage their starts. Piastri got a pretty good start as well, so if you can kind of get that going, I like it's all to play for, Gav. And even P2 in the drivers' standings, I wouldn't write that off as well as being just a lock for Mercedes, because they're going to suffer gremlins too. They're not perfect, they're not immune, as we've seen in George Russell's case for both China and in Japan. They have the potential to make failures too. So I think we've got a pretty exciting season lined up. And one last thing before I shut up and let you get in. Kimi Antonelli, I'd say the point for Mercedes for them to decide which horse to back is, this is my prediction, it's the European leg. Do you remember last year? Kimi Antonelli had a good start to the season. He was on
fumbled
the
it.
podium from in Canada, and then there was like a 6 or 7 race lull where he
Yeah.
just couldn't finish races. He kept crashing. He crashed into Max Verstappen in Austria. So I think they'll wait until he's cleared his European home season sort of leg, and then they'll make the call. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that will be their thinking exactly, but I think that's,
Are you
but I
sure?
think, no, I don't think they'll think that way. I mean, that was his rookie year, fresh to F1. But I think that's our thinking. That's my thinking, is like, so yeah, maybe it is their thinking. In a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is will those ghosts haunt Kimi of the European leg from last year? Or will he just be like, I'm so here, like I have no qualms anymore. But I love it. Let's watch it. Let's watch it play out, and let's talk about it as it happens, as that European leg plays out. I don't know if you saw that. Going back to Max kicked out Giles from the Guardian the F1 correspondent from The
I
Guardian,
did see that.
out
Yeah,
of the press conference. Do you know why he kicked him out?
I do.
Yeah,
I
so
do.
so for those who don't know, Giles asked, very prominent F1, like long-standing F1 correspondent for The Guardian, um, had asked Max at the end of last year quite a pointed question, which was basically, if you had not crashed into George out of anger, he didn't say it in these words, but this is what he was intimating. Had you not crashed into George, you would have won. Do you regret this at all? And it really upset Max. And this tells you something about Max. Giles was in a press conference and got booted out as soon as Max saw him. It was like, it's a bit Donald Trumpy from Max, to be honest. Like, you're the you're the fake news. But he kicked him out, and it was that was a bit of drama for the week. So I think Max is in a funny place in his head. Actually, I think, as strong as he is as a person and as resilient, everyone's got cracks. And I think actually that's a sign of weakness when you kick a journalist out for asking a difficult question. After all, a journalist's job is always to ask the difficult questions. And if you don't like it, then, you don't just get to kick them out unless you're Donald Trump or Max Verstappen.
It's not Max's press conference. It's not his responsibility. It's not his right to be able to say that. You should leave, and I'm not going to give the press conference otherwise. I saw this, and it didn't sit well with me. As someone who likes to admire Max, not necessarily like him, but admire his driving and some of what he does off track. This really rubbed me the wrong way, because it's very much a case of that fourth estate is there to hold those in prominent positions or positions of power of some sort accountable for their actions. And if you don't, it's like the journalistic equivalent of, if a gap exists and you don't go for it, are you no longer a driver? This is like, if a meaty question exists and you don't ask it, are you a journalist anymore? And if they pull their punches, and if they hold back and only ask softball questions just because that's what curries favor with the drivers, then all of us suffer. None of us get better quality journalism, and we end up with journalistic standards that are in the toilet. So that was a poor move from Max's side, in my opinion. And I hope someone slaps him on the wrist about it, or does something about it that just sort of puts him in his place about the rights that he has. And it's his job. It's his job. He can just not answer the question.
Yeah.
Grow up, mate.
Grow up, mate. Pierre Gasly
on Max. No, you go for it, because that's exactly where I was going. So go on, Gav.
No, finish your thought on Max. Go on, finish your.
I was just gonna say,
I'm just like
Max,
Pierre Gasly, P7,
and Max couldn't get past him. That's the thing.
Couldn't get past him,
and
that would make any man want to spend more time with his family.
Looking at the rear of an Alpine stepping out. Gasly's racecraft. I mean, to hold Max Verstappen behind, okay, so there might be some differences in machinery, which is kind of bonkers to begin with. But for Pierre to do that lap after lap and to hold Max behind, I mean, that's just a chef's kiss performance right there. Like,
So
we've been
good.
sleeping on Gasly, haven't we?
Yeah, we so have. The two drivers I've always thought are underrated are Leclerc and Gasly. They're two of the drivers that I felt for a long time, if given the right machinery, can dominate, and if not win a world championship, can like show their skill. And I've always felt that with Gasly. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for him. He has been in a tractor for years. Next to, you remember the relationship with Gasly and Ocon was just awful, just leading to crashes and stuff. So where did Ocon finish? He got in the points as well in the Haas, so that's kind of cool. So both the old Alpine boys back in the points. Shout out to Liam Lawson, P9. After all the talk of him being dominated by his recently by his driving partner, that was kind of cool.
We asked yesterday, was youth going to be dominant over experience?
We did.
And I think we got mixed results today, didn't we? We got Kimi coming along and winning, but then Lawson beat Lindblad, Ocon beat Bearman. Alonso beat Stroll. Who else do we have? Gasly beat Colapinto. Leclerc beat Hamilton. Yeah, so there was kind of
Bit of a mixed bag.
smackdown to the youth, except for right at the very top
Wait,
with Kimi.
Carlos Sainz beat. Did he? Yes, he did. He massively beat
Gotta figure
Alex.
this out. Is Carlos Sainz older or younger than Alex Albon? I'll find that answer.
Has to be older.
He's 1 year older.
Really?
There you go. It's definitive. Yeah, he's 31.
Okay, there you go. That was a guess.
Isn't
And I did lucky.
yeah.
Got lucky. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Fascinating. So
What of the super clipping or the super clipping that didn't really show up? But there was a lot of talk about batteries over the race weekend.
yeah, there was.
Are you
Yeah.
getting sick of Formula battery?
No, I'm kind of into it still. I'm into the Mario. I'm still vibing on the Mario Kart for the moment. I think we talked about it at the top of this episode, but this danger of the closing speed. There are problems, and the last thing I think any of us want to see is someone getting hurt because of hitting a mushroom in Mario Kart. But no, I'm kind of into it because I think the mathematical side of my brain enjoys watching these drivers grapple with energy deployment. Like sometimes a change is as good as a holiday, right? So I think I'm still into it. It might get tired, but let's see.
What I like about it compared to DRS is that it means that the overtakes can happen in different places. The overtakes are attempted at least in places that you would never have seen them in the DRS era. So normally you just get DRS passes down the main straight. Maybe if there's another straight after it, like in Bahrain, you'd get a pass back. But here we've got all kinds of passing opportunities going at different parts on the track, like the attack into the final chicane. That's something that used to be a hallmark of F1 back in the 90s, because that was like the only place to get your overtake done. In fact, that was the spot where Senna and Prost famously came together, where they crashed at the 1988 or 89 F1 World Championship, which decided the championship in Prost's favour. And so that's just hasn't been a thing in more recent F1. You just don't see overtakes attempts coming into that spot. But we saw loads of it this time. We saw overtakes happening at the hairpin. That's just, this never happens. And an overtake attempt coming into Spoon is kind of unthinkable, except if someone's got a failure, which George Russell actually did. Actually, that reminds me. Leclerc got past him because of a battery deployment issue. So again, batteries and Russell, it just was not his weekend. But I suppose on the flip side for Russell, he only finished P4. It wasn't like the safety car unlucky experience, and then the battery meant that he finished P9 or P10. He still finished with decent haul of points.
Yeah,
And he's
5/10, half a second behind. Yeah, behind
Yeah,
the player.
yeah.
But I'd love to hear you talk more about this kind of these unusual, or what feel now like unusual overtake zones. Is that obviously we understood that DRS gave a lot of power for people to overtake on the straight in the previous regulation set, because you could just have this incredible speed. They couldn't open their rear wing. You could if you were following within 1 second. But explain to me how you see this new regulation set and energy deployment, meaning that more unusual parts of the track become like what's the mechanics behind that?
So there's two things to it that I can see. One is, do you remember all the gamesmanship around DRS detection points?
Yeah.
And sort of hovering back so you could be the second car or the following car, and then you'd get the DRS advantage?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
at Suzuka, the DRS zone was down the main straight. So you wouldn't overtake coming into that chicane because you'd then pass the detection line first. So the car that you just overtook would get the DRS benefit, and then
Got you.
they'd pass you down the straight. So it was really kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And that's why overtaking at Suzuka is notoriously hard in the last couple of years. I think last year they finished top 6 in top 6 starting order, if you remember. It was like the first time that it happened at that circuit. But it's just at different circuits it might be different. But at Suzuka, you don't overtake into that last chicane because you set yourself up to fail with the main straight and the DRS. So that's one. The other part is, because of the winding nature of the circuit and the aero package that you've got and the dirty air, it can be hard to get close enough to try and overtake in a curvy part of the track because you're so affected by all the dirty air, so your car's sliding around a lot. But as we saw with Bearman, having a 50-kilometer overspeed coming into a section where you wouldn't normally have an overtake attempted, that gives you the kind of element of surprise, and you can also blitz through with a speed difference that makes an overtake possible in the first place if you can get on the brakes. So those two things combined, the not having to deal with DRS shenanigans and having the ability to get faster, closer at unusual parts of the circuit, I think just opens up the racing potential. Rather than closing it down, I think it actually opens it up.
And I think kind of a lack of dirty air from no longer having the ground effect cars means that you can follow closer in the first place, right? So you can. We're seeing a lot more wheel-to-wheel racing. We're seeing a lot of cars following closer, and that has to be a result of less turbulent air coming back, toward the car following, right? So
the thing they tried to do with the ground effect era was to reduce the dirty air, but it either made it worse or didn't do anything to address it. So whatever they've done with the current regulation set, it does seem to be working. And the guys actually said in the cool down room before they went on the podium, the three podium dudes, they were sort of chatting about how much closer you can race. So to me, this is a win. We've got some issues with battery deployment, and we talk about batteries way more than we really would like to. But I think the long and the short of it so far seems to be that the racing's more exciting.
I agree. Love it. Anything else you want to catch up on before we drop off?
I'm just basking in the glow of Kimi Antonelli sitting at the top of the table.
It's so good, isn't it? It is so good. We've game on. I mean, it's such a shame that we're losing Bahrain and Saudi. It's like, it's such a shame because I'd love to see this, kind of all races this year. But we have to wait to the 5th of it's the 5th, isn't it? The 5th of May for Miami. It's we've just got to sit in the hands for a month.
It's okay. I'll just bask in the glow for a month. That's fine. But I think we should think about something that we can talk about between now and then. I've got some ideas, Gab. So I think we'll find ourselves back on the pod before the Miami Grand Prix rolls around. And maybe you'll be basking as well, but I know I certainly will be.
Well, I'm agnostic this year, so I'm just happy for everyone. I'm the benevolent podcast god right now. But yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, well, look, you put your head down and come up with some fun stuff to talk about. I think there's going to be loads of interesting news that comes out over the next couple of weeks, so I think we'll have plenty of fodder to jump back on before Miami on the 5th of May. But until then, see you soon.